Okay, so welcome back to the Northern Nerd Network, or the Nerdcast, sorry. My name is Dan Chessel, and today we have on our show is none other than Chelsea Thompson. My tongue is all twisted up, but yeah, say hi, Chelsea.
Hi, that's why you got me
Yes, it is
as
true.
your co-host to smooth things over.
And on today's episode, we have our very special guest, Shane Turgeon. Say hello.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Shane, where are you from? Why do we have you on the show today? Do you know why?
I'm a pretty nerdy guy. I'm from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I am the owner of Shades of Grey, Tattoos, Toys, and Comic Books on White Avenue. I am the general manager and co-founder of the Edmonton Comic and Entertainment Expo. I am the director and founder and organizer of the Edmonton Collector Con. I am the author of the Force in the Flesh book series. I don't know, certified appraiser for pop culture collectibles. I have a few, my hands in a few nerdy pies, I guess you could say.
And all-round awesome guy.
Yeah, I try to be awesome.
Just a few things on the little checklist
on
there.
your plate.
Yeah, it's a pretty healthy resume, I suppose.
If one was to be a professional nerd, I think Shane would be that.
Someone to aspire to.
I've made a living doing nerdy things, absolutely.
That is pretty awesome. Okay, so typically we start off by asking everybody how their week was. So Shane, I'm just going to ask you, how was your week? How's things at the shop?
It's been a very good week. We've got a lot of exciting things happening at the shop right now. Some announcements coming in the next couple of weeks that we can't really talk about yet, but that we're very excited for. We also just announced that we're bringing the art show that I put on in San Francisco called Portraits from a Galaxy Far, Far Away. It's basically 30 tattoo artists from around the world did portraits of their favorite Star Wars characters as if they would be heavily tattooed and what kind of tattoos they would have. We teased the art show in Cardiff, Wales last July, and then we did the full-blown show at Super 7 Gallery in San Francisco in November, and now we're bringing it here, and it's going to debut with an opening night show here at the shop on February 26th. And we've got some really great new vintage toy collections that have been in the shop. So it's been a very good week. There's lots of exciting things happening right now.
That's pretty awesome. Well, we do have, I believe, your event up on our calendar. So if you want to go and check out our nerd calendar of all the geeky, nerdy things that are happening in the city, go check that out on the Northern Nerd Network
webpage.
Webpage. We do have a calendar there, so go check that out. Chelsea,
Yeah.
How was your week?
Yeah, my week's been pretty good. Mostly working. I don't know when Alberta's Family Day is. I know it's sometime in February, but BC's Family Day was today, so I had the day off today. It was nice. Leisurely, hung around the house, went out for lunch. Yeah,
Ours is next week.
Good. Yeah, pretty mellow.
Just taking it easy.
Taking it easy, yeah. Still working on temporary call-out at the school that I've been working at. That's been pretty good. Friday was swimming day. That was really nice. Take all the kids to the pool. Yeah.
Awesome.
How about you? How's your week?
My week was pretty fun. Actually, I had a day where I got to go play some board games, and we just got to play some Blood Rage again, and the other one, Takanoko. That was the other one, which was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. But I also got this thing here, which if you can't see it on the screen, it's because it's really tiny.
It's pretty small. You might need to take a picture of it and post it to the Facebook page later.
I might have to do that. So that I have this dice here. I'm gonna roll it. It on here it says a skill check, +3 to segues. So I am going in for my book, and I'm gonna check. Okay, I got 7, so I only get +1 today.
I have a tradition of making my friends buttons with inside jokes for Christmas presents. And a running joke we have here on the Nerdcast is that Dan's segue skills are sometimes hit and miss. So his button for Christmas this year was a little button that has a D20 on it that says +3 to segways.
Yeah,
That's
and
what he's wearing
today's
on his
only gonna be
jacket.
+1, so I mean we're not gonna hit too good. So
So we'll
I
see.
will be right on that for you then. That's why
We'll
you
see
have
if we
me.
can help you with segues today.
that sounds awesome. All right. Well, speaking of segues, let's just get into our news.
Jump
That
right
was a
into the
really good
news.
segue.
That's how we do things. We just jump right into things.
Well, I know many of our listeners and viewers will probably already be full of dinner, but there's always room for more delicious food. So why don't we start with that one? There's a company called Memphis Meats who has been working on growing meat. So they take meat cells from cows, pigs, etc., grow it, and then harvest it, and it gives you meat that means an animal didn't have to be slaughtered to eat it. So they've got a video up on Facebook. It's the first link on our news items this evening, where they talk about the project that they've been working on, and they have a chef work with the meat that they've created to make a delicious-looking meatball that they have some people test out. What I think is most interesting about this is they talk about the environmental impact that traditional ranching and slaughterhouses have on the environment. And so that's sort of the approach where they were coming from working on this project, is looking for a way to produce meat with less of an environmental impact.
Is this going to be one of those things where they're going to actually attract the attention of the vegans? That's the question. Like, is this going to be good enough for vegans to eat? Because you're not actually like killing a cow, right? So
I'm a very, very, very strict vegetarian. I'm not vegan, but I'm a very strict vegetarian, and I find the concept morally repugnant on so many levels, because now we're messing with things that we shouldn't really be messing with. So it's not so much that an animal didn't die, but now we're eating frankenfood to the utmost level in scientifically, genetically altered food. And I mean, from a Star Trek perspective, it's like replicators, and it's totally like where things are going to go, and like that's kind of cool. But on the flip side, I can't get behind it at all. Like I definitely, it's going to sway me to be having a hamburger that's grown in a lab.
I'm gonna honestly I'll have a hard time eating this personally, because I kind of am partially to Alberta beef, to be honest with you. And I do know how steak tastes in the States, and I know how steak tastes up here, and it's vastly different. And so I know that the way you feed and the way you culture a certain cow depends on how the actual like meat will taste later on. I don't know how, or if I can like really get behind something that was made in a lab. I can't imagine it being that
If you're
as
gonna go
good.
there, if you're gonna eat a steak, you want it to be the real thing.
I want it to be the real thing. That's just me personally.
I really appreciate what they're doing from the environmental impact level. Like, I think that's important. And most people who eat meat actually don't realize the level of environmental impact, that would, like, what it takes to raise a cow, one cow, for food, in terms of environmental devastation, in terms of water usage, in terms of resources, and for feed, is absolutely mind-blowing.
Well, and in terms of how much nitrogen they put back into the soil that the ranch is located on, which washes into streams and rivers, and then you get nitrogenated streams and rivers, the impact is gigantic.
Yeah, and I think that, so it's absolutely admirable that they're trying to create new ways for people to still have their meat, because I know how, violently opposed meat eaters can be to the concept of veganism and vegetarianism. So I can really appreciate what they're doing, but I still, I'm just not that into lab stuff. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the comic book Elephant Men by Richard Starkings. It's, in my opinion, one of the best comics out there, but it really gets into the impact of genetically engineered animals, genetically engineering, it's more future soldiers, like creating animal-human hybrids for war, and then the social impact of all of that. It's a brilliant comic book series, and this would just fit perfectly in that whole world of things that they're doing. So
It makes me curious to learn more specifics about their process. Because, I mean, anything you get into the lab, then you get into, like Shane, you're saying, into that gray area of genetic modification. But if it's merely taking a beef cell and it's replicating on its own as it would inside the body, just outside the body, and they're not modifying it in any way, I don't know. I think I would be interested to know more about their process.
the science behind it is fascinating.
Yeah.
There's no question. I'm just not putting it in my mouth.
It's just like bugs. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of people out there that are really for bugs to be eating, just because they're so plentiful and they're very easy to culture. But there's no way I'm eating that.
And they're full of protein.
Yeah.
No ants for Dan?
No, not no. Not going to happen.
Well, from something that clearly brings up so many different perspectives to something that I think everybody can get behind, Super Mario. I think everybody who watches and listens our show will be very excited to hear the news that Universal Studios will be partnering with Nintendo to open a Nintendo portion in all of its theme parks coming soon. So most likely they will open with a very own Nintendo Island in its Universal Florida Islands of Adventure Park and grow from there to all of its other parks. So that will be coming soon. I really can't wait to see like what kind of rides they will create for this park. Speculations, thoughts? What if Nintendo theme park, what is the ride that you hope that they make?
That would be tough.
Laser tag.
Yeah, Metroid. That'd be
pretty cool.
That would be cool. Typically, like anything that they could possibly do, like Nintendo, it's like Disney, right? Like to me, Nintendo and Disney are sort of on the same kind of level, where it's I don't know, like what Disney did for movies, Nintendo did for video games. So I don't know why they haven't made any kind of theme park yet. And now they're going to be into that.
They are.
So
Well,
I'm very curious to see what they do with that.
It's interesting because there was actually a rumor going around last year that Disney was in talks to buy Nintendo completely. And there was a lot of speculation about that, what would come from it. But Nintendo has been notoriously under-licensed. They're a company that really they could be making millions and millions and millions of dollars just in licensing that they're not doing because they're just, I don't know if they're not interested or what. So by partnering with a company like Universal, I think you're going to see a lot more come of it than just a theme park. I would assume there's going to be a whole lot more licensing in terms of different products are going to become available as well. So it'll be really interesting to see where that goes.
Well, with any theme park, the moment you step off a ride, you go into their gift shop. Like that's typically the way they have it set up in any of their theme parks. Is you come off, you go into their specific theme park gift shop, and so I'm assuming that they'll have a lot of different kind of Nintendo-esque kind of gifts that will be there that you won't find anywhere else. I'm very curious to see what they do with it. I really am, because I mean, I love Nintendo. I grew up on Nintendo, and to see them do a theme park would be pretty awesome. I love the way that they've done their theme parks. Like Universal Studios has been pretty awesome, and they don't have the Marvel license anymore, because they used to have Marvel. They used to have like I still have the Hulk coaster and the Spider-Man ride and all those other cool stuff.
The article that we have linked speculates that because Disney now owns Marvel, that Universal will be closing the Marvel Island, and that whatever they're doing with Nintendo will move into that space in Islands of Adventure.
That would be.
Which makes me so sad because honestly, the Incredible Hulk roller coaster at Universal Studios is like my favorite roller coaster ever. It's amazing.
It is a pretty awesome roller coaster. I mean, when it shoots you 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, I mean,
Yeah.
that is.
So that you're going already before you hit the first drop.
Yeah, it is pretty awesome. I mean, like, I don't know if anyone has been to this theme park yet, other than me and Chelsea. But you go up in a tube, and it starts to like shake. Like the whole roller coaster starts shaking, and you get smoke in the tube and everything else, and you can't even really see what's ahead of you. And then all of a sudden, you just shoot out of this and out into the open. And man alive, it's a rush. I really love that roller coaster. So yeah, I'd be kind of curious to see what they do with that.
I've never actually been to Universal Studios. I'm going to California on the 2nd of March, so maybe I will have to make a point to go to Universal Studios.
They don't have the
I don't
same
know
rides
about, in their park in California, it doesn't have the same rides as their park in Florida, and this one's in Florida. If you ever have the chance to go to their park in Florida, it's awesome. Yeah, but that's where talks are that the first Nintendo portion of the park will open is the park in Florida, and then they'll have similar attractions that open at their one in California, their one in Japan or Singapore. And yeah, any other future subsequent properties. That's what the article that we've got linked is talking about. Personally, I really hope they manage to come up with some kind of like real life Mario Kart ride. That would be amazing. Where you could like go-kart it and like go-kart race Mario Kart again.
There you go, go-karts.
Yeah.
With actual
something
like
something
shells
like
and
that,
stuff
where
like that. You can shoot at your friends.
Stuff out of something, yeah. Realize that for me. That would be awesome.
Could you imagine like shooting a turtle shell at your buddies and then watching them spin out and crash?
That'd be pretty rad.
That'd be pretty awesome. I'd be up for that.
Oh, pieces of my childhood. You know what else are pieces of my childhood? The Ghostbusters Lego set. And not only the original, but now the new
They didn't have that with your kids, did they? I don't remember that being a part of my childhood.
Well, I had the like action figures with the Lego Ghostbusters Fire Hall.
I had the Fire Hall when I was a kid.
The original Ghostbusters also had its own Lego set. I believe it took a while to come out, but it did have one. But the new reboot is following suit, and the first, I believe they're going to have a couple, but the first one will be available the day the movie releases. And so it is the ladies in their Ghostbuster mobile that's completely made of bricks. It's pretty awesome. Complete with their packs and a ghost. That looks pretty creepy.
Yeah, the ghost does look a little creepy. I do. How are you guys? How are you? What do you think about the new movie? Are you excited for it?
I'm a little leery. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, everything I've seen about it doesn't make it sound like it's going to hold a candle to the originals. I mean, I hope that it's a really great movie, but you can't top what was done. You know, most people think that the Ghostbusters video game that came out a few years ago was the actual Ghostbusters 3 that we should have got, and that, you know, sort of left it at that. I get rebooting it for a new generation, but it's kind of one of those things like, enough with the reboots already. Come up with some original ideas, Hollywood. But I hope it's good. I hope it's a lot of fun, because the first two Ghostbusters movies are two of my favorites, and I really hope this one holds water.
Well, I loved the cartoon when I was a kid. I loved the movies. The movies were just absolutely amazing, and they're one of those things when I was growing up. It's just one of those things that just stays with you. And I don't know. Rick Moranis is one of my favorite in that movie. He was amazing. But yeah, I don't know. Like, to me, I haven't really seen a whole lot. They haven't shown a whole lot of the movie, right? They've just shown posters and a couple little tidbits here and there, but I don't know. I don't know what to expect yet. But the Lego set looks kind of cool.
Yeah, Lego is one of the one of the premier toy lines right now, and their first foray into licensing was with Star Wars in 1999. Before that, they had never done a licensed set whatsoever. So the Ghostbusters set that they previously did actually just came out last year.
Yeah.
So since they started like licensing all these other properties, it's just like grown their brand by like leaps and bounds. So between all of the things that they've got going on, now they're also reaching out and they're like going into like classic properties and making stuff that people want to see. They're just the strength of that brand is insane, and it's going to keep going that way with the more fun stuff like this that they make.
I cannot tell you how much Lego is in this house. If you could look up right there, that's
Well,
Lego there.
I'm
I
always in
got
awe
Lego
of-
in the other room. It's insane how much Lego we have, and most of it's Star Wars.
Lego Creative, like the builders that they have behind the set who work out the logistics of actually creating these iconic pieces in brick to make them accessible and rebuildable to the common person. The creativity behind that just boggles my mind. The builders that they have who visualize and create the prototypes and make them accessible and rebuildable. It's amazing to me. And that they'll tackle anything across the board. Fandom has so many little niches, and Lego, if there's enough demand, will tap into pretty much anything and make a set for it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think they're just going to keep going and going and going and going and being, continuing to be one of the most successful brands out there.
Yeah, if they keep tapping into the things that you really want the most, I believe that they got it.
Well, from
we
one
do
successful...
sorry, hang on. We do have one comment from
Aaron?
Yeah, and he says he thinks that the all-female thing is kind of a one-dimensional gimmick, and I don't know. What do you guys think? There's a lot of this happening out there, like where they're bringing a lot of either a minority group character into a role like this, or they're just bringing in a lot of women into these comic book or like Ghostbusters here. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that's okay? Like, is it? I don't know. Is it gimmicky, or is it just the way we're going?
I think it's a powder keg issue that doesn't matter what side of the fence you're going to be on, somebody's going to end up screaming in your face about it, so it's best to shut up about it.
Fair enough.
It's when you start having an opinion on things that people are so opinionated about, you're just open yourself up to internet vitriol.
All right. So, anyways, what was next here?
Well, we were talking about Lego, one incredibly successful company, and so we're going to jump to another incredibly successful company.
See,
Apple.
I'm telling you, +1 for the segues today.
So Apple has announced a launch date for some new product releases, which are new but not really. And as I'm not an Apple acolyte, it kind of makes me roll my eyes a little bit. But March 15th, they have a new phone being released, an updated iPad being released, and updates and new features for the Apple Watch. So I don't know, do either of you gentlemen use Apple products? Are you a little more excited about this than I am?
I'm an Apple kid through and through, but I'm not like, oh my God, Apple's got something new. I need to get rid of this device that works perfectly fine and go buy the new Apple device, because that's I can't get my head around that kind of money. But I do really enjoy Apple products. I mean, I'm talking to you on my MacBook Pro right now with my iPhone 5 sitting right beside me, and I run my entertainment system at home off of a Mac Mini, and they're all integrated, and they all talk, and they all do these things that are, well beyond me, and I really enjoy that aspect of it. So I think it's cool, but I also think that the company, hasn't really done anything super innovative since Steve Jobs died, and
Mm-hmm.
to see what goes from there. How the company continues to maintain its market share hold with its lead innovator gone.
Yeah, if they actually manage to create another new product, or if their new products will just be updates on existing products,
Yeah.
which is basically what is coming out on March 15th. The Apple 5 SE is the phone that they're coming out with, which is basically the iPhone 5 outside with the iPhone 6 insides, staying at the price point of the iPhone 5. So trying to give consumers a little bit more bang for their buck. And then the iPad Air 3, again, sort of same outsides with updated insides. So not really anything new, just more updates.
Yeah, it's nothing to be really excited about, is it?
Although they're trying to hype it like it is.
Yeah, of course. That's what we're supposed to buy into. Hook, line, and sinker.
Well, the funny thing is, I kind of missed out on this whole announcement for some reason. Typically, I watch and make sure that I'm always on to seeing what Apple has to do. I honestly I haven't really been paying a whole lot of attention to what Apple's been doing the last little while. Trina, the reason why we have this on here in the first place is because Trina wanted to put it on here, obviously, or the producer. I should say my producer wanted to put this up on here. I don't really care about Apple that much. So
I would
I don't
venture
know.
to say, though, that probably a good chunk of our viewers and listeners are big fans of Apple products. So I would say, being a
I
very successful company like Lego, several watchers and listeners out there probably are watching and listening along, just like Shane is talking to us now,
they're,
on
they're
their MacBooks.
they're watching this exact thing on their MacBook, and they're like, "What is he doing? What is he talking about?" I don't know. I like to see what they're doing because they have this ability to shape the landscape of what we are in, right? Like they are the ones who brought the iPhone, and they're the ones who brought the iPad and the iPod and all these other cool inventions. But I want to see what they're going to come up with next. Are they going to be able to continue on and bring us that next amazing thing? I don't think that Apple Watch is the next amazing thing, but I don't know.
Well, again, I think, like Shane said, I think all of those can be way more broadly attributed to Steve Jobs than to Apple. And so the question is, will they be able to create something new like he did? Or, will it be updates on what they've already got? So yeah, I guess tuning into launches and things like that is the way to see, what will be the way forward for them without Steve Jobs.
Yes. That is, I think, would be about it for
Yeah,
our
that's
news
all we got
items.
for the news tonight. Now we're on to the good stuff, the
Yes.
awesome stuff, the Edmonton Collectible Show.
Where awesome and new and creative things are always happening.
Or something, or people just coming to buy cool stuff.
Buy
Yes.
cool stuff.
Or the really old stuff. Like that's what it is.
Where people
The
come to
things
buy
that
back bits and pieces of their childhood.
Right.
Which, by the way, I've lost a lot, and I always go to these shows, and I'm like, oh man, I really got to get that thing again. Like
So-
the Ghostbuster, like Fire Hall. I loved that thing when I was a kid.
That Ghostbusters Fire Hall is a hard one to find.
It was amazing. I love that thing. It had the fire pole where you could put your guy on there and he spun around. Oh man! And the slime, you put the slime in the top, and it would like fall through the holes and slime your guy. Oh yeah, it was a great toy. Also, we also had the Ghostbuster Ecto 1, and man, it was cool. Until my mom got really mad at us and threw a bowling ball on it, but that's another story for another day.
Damn.
Yeah, I was very upset that day. Anyways, continue.
Well,
what
Shane,
is the Collector Con? Let's go with that.
The Edmonton Collector Con is a small show that happens 3 times a year that is just dedicated to toys and comic collectibles. As you know, comic book conventions started to morph into all of these, into the entertainment industry, as we like to call it, and started including all sorts of stuff that wasn't even really related to what built the industry. I felt there was a significant need to kind of dial things back to their basics, and just have like a straight up old school collectible show for toys and comic books. So I started the first one in I guess 2014 now, and we've been rolling along steadily with them since. So yeah,
I believe we were there and shot some footage at that one, or was that last year's?
Yeah, no, that was one of last year's. Yeah, that was at our new venue. We've changed venues from our first one. Our first few were at the Chateau Lacombe downtown, and now we are comfortably at home at the Italian Cultural Center. We really seem to enjoy that space. They're great to work with and gives us pretty much everything that we need. So
It is a great space, and it's a really great size. Being there last year shooting stuff, it's a really great size for what you have. Yeah, being able to have a smaller space and really talk to the collectors who are there selling items and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a really good venue.
yeah, I mean, for me, the you know, I've been a comic book collector for almost 30 years now, and I've been an action figure collector for 26 years. And this is not including the times that I was playing with my toys as a kid. You know, I think there's a distinct difference in those periods. So I've been around the community for a long time, and for me, community has always been what this is about. It's a great day to come out with your fellow collector friends, meet other collector friends, meet new friends, talk with dealers, network with people, see who's got different things, and hopefully add some cool stuff for your collection. But really, at the end of the day, you know, if you came out and you had a really good time and hung out with your buddies and talked about nerdy stuff all day, that's all that we're really kind of aiming for everybody. You know, it's a cheap show to get into. It's $5. You can't really find $5 entertainment anywhere anymore. So it's
And there is nothing quite like that experience of being surrounded by like-minded people. It's a really great thing.
Yeah, or stuff that that you've grown up with, or that you're just super passionate about. I mean, if you love collecting comic books, you come to our show, and we've got vendors who have tons of the new stuff, and we've got guys with lots of great Silver Age keys and Golden Age comics and everything like that. If you're a toy collector, there's tons of people who are into the modern stuff there, or the Funko vinyls, all that sort of stuff. And then there's like solid vintage toy dealers like myself who just deal in a lot of the stuff that we all grew up with, those of us who are in our 30s and 40s anyways.
So in the years that you guys have been up and running, what are some of the coolest comics or collections that you've seen come into the show to be put on display or sold?
That's a really interesting question, because there's the amount of vendors that we have literally run the gamut of what there are. For me personally, I love seeing nice key Silver Age comic books. That's a really good thing, and I love seeing high grade vintage toys still in the original packaging and stuff like that. At the show last spring, so our June show, I had just purchased a very significant vintage Star Wars collection, all still in the original packaging, and that
wow.
very, very well with everybody who was there, and we sold a lot of it. But then just like really obscure stuff. One guy had one of the old Knight Rider car sets that went through and smashed through the semi-truck. He still had that in the original box, and I don't know why I didn't buy it. I'm still kind of kicking myself over that one. But I love seeing all the really obscure 80s toy lines and stuff, too, that people don't even know about. That stuff really gets me going.
I was just going to say, do you ever find yourself in the position as you're watching vendors load in, you're like, oh, I want that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, but no, I can't. I have to leave it. People are coming. I can't do it.
All the time. It's like you're making a mental shopping list as everyone's setting up, because I'm sitting there for the whole day, just visiting. And I'm like, all right, yeah, okay, I got my eye on that. Yeah, see what happens. So. Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things where you're like, I have a shop and I can actually turn a profit on that one.
That too. I mean, you're always on the lookout for bargains on things that people might not know the full value of. That's the one thing that's really great about Canada is a lot of people don't realize that there are a lot of vintage Canadian exclusive toys that were only available in this country, from lines like Star Wars, GI Joe, and various other things like obscure stuff like Battlestar Galactica. There's the Battlestar Galactica Land Ram toy, which was only available in Canada. And a lot of people just have them and they bring them out, and it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to put this out for $40. I'll buy it and I can turn around and sell it for $1,000 because that's how some of that stuff works.
It's funny that you mentioned even something as small and simple as the French labels on packaging that we get here that they don't get anywhere else. Even that.
Yeah, well, for especially in terms of vintage Star Wars, Canadian stuff is highly in demand. Not even with exclusive items, but just that packaging. The very first 12 backs that came out in Canada had a pyramid logo on the bottom corner that said "La Guerre des Étoiles" in this big triangle logo, and those Canadian 12 backs are, highly sought after, incredibly rare, and worth a significant sum of money. Because what the difference is between the Canadian packaging and the U.S. packaging, besides the language, is Canada had a population of 10% of that of the U.S. population. So our toys were produced in that much fewer quantity as versus the American stuff. So by nature, it's already 90% less common. And then you factor in what didn't survive, and that these were toys that were meant to be played with and not kept in the package. So you're talking about stuff that is can be very, very difficult to locate.
Is there anything in your shop at the moment that is I don't know, extra special to you?
In the shop currently, I just picked up a beautiful collection of vintage Masters of the Universe stuff, all still in the original package. And there is the Holy Grail from the Masters of the Universe toy line here. It's actually, I just sold it, but it's still in the shop before I ship it. And it's graded by AFA, the Action Figure Authority grading company. It's an AFA 85 laser light Skeletor, which was only released in Italy in 1988, which was 2 years after the line was discontinued domestically. So it is considered one of the Holy Grails from the Masters of the Universe line, and it's in the store currently. So that's pretty cool. And there's also a ton of other rad Masters of the Universe stuff. We've been buying some pretty cool collections lately. We just finished remodeling the collectible side of the store, and we have some super rad stuff. A lot of G1 Transformers still in the original packaging. We have an original boxed Optimus Prime and Shockwave. A bunch of GI Joe stuff. Yeah, it's a pretty fun place to be every day.
GI Joes are one of the ones that I never really got a whole lot into. I had a few, just the odd ones here and there, but I did have a lot of Master of the Universe.
Commander, come on, Dan.
I know. I remember having the what's it called? The big what was this? Grayskull. That was pretty awesome. That had the little trapdoor in it.
Yeah, there was a very nice Canadian boxed Castle Grayskull that came in this collection that ended up coming home with me. That happens a lot sometimes.
I was just gonna say, so like the Collector Con, as collectors load in, when you bring collections into the shop, are there pieces where it's like, nope, that one comes with me before I put any of it out on the floor?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my personal collection has been thinned down a lot, but there are still a handful of iconic pieces that I'm still looking for, and a handful of just the odd thing that really strikes my fancy or that I always wanted as a kid. And it doesn't mean I'm going to keep it for forever, but there are definitely things that come through the shop that never ever see the sales floor. That's the benefit of being a business owner, right? And dealing in this stuff.
Yeah.
You get to see all the great stuff that comes through, and you're like, yeah, I think that's gonna go at my house now.
Well, and technically, I get it for free too, right? Because I buy the collection, and then it just you make your money back on the collection, and then everything else is profit. But that just happened to be profit that came home and sat on my shelf.
So now, I mean, listening to you speak about collectibles and comics, clearly they hold a very special spot in your heart, in your own personal collection. Is it possible to narrow down a favorite or a something that you are most proud of?
Um, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's kind of a loaded question because there's probably a handful of things that I could pick that would fall into that.
That would fall under
Uh,
that, yeah.
all the other toys would be like, oh, I'm so jealous that you didn't pick me.
I mean, I still have my childhood Slave One and Snowspeeder toys from the vintage Star Wars line. So those, because they're the only two pieces that I have from that line from my
That
childhood,
survived, yeah.
they have a pretty special place in my heart.
Yeah, no kidding.
There's not a lot of value to them. You know, they're beat up, they're played with, and they're just common production toys.
But,
Um,
that, but they're yours. That's
mine.
what makes them awesome.
Totally. Over the past, 15 years, my interest kind of grew away from production and went into pre-production. So the stuff that went into designing and making the toys. I have
So molds and things like that?
the molds, the sculpts, the hard copies, the painting,
Wow.
the artwork. So that's where my interest went. I have kind of elitist and expensive taste when it comes to the collectibles. And I also, so that also rolls over into comic books because I collect original comic art, so the artwork from the comic books as opposed to just having a comic book. Anybody can have the action figure, but only one person in the world can have the sculpt for that action figure, and that's a very, very cool thing to be able to honor the history of it, to preserve it, to be a steward of the history of the toy lines. So for me, that's a very important thing. And I guess if I were to pick, I would say it would be the original packaging painting for the G.I. Joe figure Night Viper. For the G.I. Joe line ran from 1982 to 1984. For figures released between 82 and 89, there are only 7 pieces of original figure packaging artwork outside of Hasbro Archives, and I have 2 of them. And that one happens to be my favorite of the 2, but they're both pretty well loved, for sure. And then I have a few other items related to the Night Viper. I have a vintage Star Wars character focus collection on a figure from the Droids cartoon called Thal Jobin. And I basically own every known prototype and pre-production example for that figure, from the conceptual sculpts, the original wax sculpts, all of the hard copies, the first shots, the coin. The figure came with a coin. I have all of the 6-up prototypes for the coin. I have the original packaging painting. I have the proof for the package, chromelin for the package. So I have all of that stuff. It is literally the entire evolution of an action figure in front of you.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's the stuff that I like. So like I say, it's rare when something comes home for me for the shop because I have, those
Just
sort
about
of
everything you want.
Yeah, like I said, so production really doesn't do it for me. So you're not going to find toy prototypes in Edmonton. So, but every now and again something comes through that I've always wanted, and I'll take it home. But for the most part, the good stuff is all at home.
Amazing. Well, what sort of things got you into this in the first place? Like, how did you even start becoming a collector?
That's I think there's several things that conspired to make that happen. First of which I loved comic books at an early age, and so I cut my teeth on comic books. That was the first thing that I started collecting. And I was really into the G.I. Joe comic when I was a kid playing with the toy line, so I started with that, and I was really into Amazing Spider-Man, so I started collecting those issues in about 1987, 1988. And I was also really into Hawkeye. He was always one of my favorite superheroes. So there used to be a very long forgotten Avengers subline called Avengers Spotlight starring Hawkeye. And I lived for that book. So every time I was like, oh, new Hawkeye comic. So that's how I got started collecting comic books. I grew up with Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Masters of the Universe, Transformers. Like those were the big things I was into as a kid. In 1990, Toy Biz released their first line of Marvel superheroes action figures, and I was like, well, I'm not really playing with my old toys anymore, but these are new toys based on comic books that I love. So I'm just going to buy them and I'm going to set them up on my shelf. So I was about 12 years old, and I was in that in-between phase. And so, yeah, I just started putting them up on the shelf, and then I picked up a old issue of Wizard: The Guide to Comics. I think it was issue number 8 back in 1990, and it had a toy price guide in it. And that started listing toy prices for vintage Star Wars figures. And then I just started asking all my friends for all their Star Wars toys, and it just evolved from there. So I started collecting vintage Star Wars in 1991, G.I. Joe in 1993, and I kind of stopped collecting comic books in the mid-90s when things got really crazy. But then about 10 years ago, I started collecting original comic book artwork and Silver Age keys, like Marvel Silver Age key issue comic books, and toy prototypes. But I also dabble in animation art and original animation art and vintage movie posters and stuff like that. So I got my hands in everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so that's your roundabout answer. I've always been a nerd,
just always been there. Always been like one of those guys that have always been doing it.
Yeah, and I was an only child, and I grew up literally at the end of a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, Saskatchewan. So there wasn't a lot for an only child to do in the long winters, except for comic books and Nintendo and toys.
That's pretty much everyone's childhood, but you just continued on. That's all.
Yeah,
and you're living out of it.
So
and
now
I've made a career, and I travel the world because of it.
That's amazing.
So now, do you have any advice for people who are currently collectors to potentially young kids who love the comics and the toys they have now and want to keep them and save them and are, potential future collectors? Bits of advice or something that you would share with people who have collections of their own and want to expand or, anything like that?
For sure. I kind of get asked this a fair bit in my role as a certified appraiser as well. But first and foremost is collect what you like. Who cares what other people think you should like or you should be into or what's cool or what's not? Collect what you like, follow your heart, and be into it. And never, ever, ever collect for investment purposes. Or at least that shouldn't be your primary reason for buying toys and action figures. The simple fact of the matter is modern toys and comic books will never, ever, ever really be worth a lot of money long term. The reason why the old stuff is because it was never intended to be kept as a collectible. It was meant to be a toy and meant to be a comic book that was just meant to be read and discarded and never thought of again, really. So if you're coming at it from an investment perspective, especially if you're very new to the hobby, you're doing it wrong. Somebody like me or a few other people who have been doing it for decades, we have a bit better insight on how to do it from an investmentary perspective. But even at that, as much as I invest in my collection, I still am only after stuff that speaks to my heart, stuff that I love. And first and foremost is following that passion of what you love. And the other thing is don't overextend yourself. The amount of people that I know who jump, they're not even going feet first. They're going like cannonball into a hobby and just like make a name with buying tons of stuff, and they get themselves into financial trouble. And that's something you have to be very, very careful of. Is don't, this is a luxury hobby. This isn't something that you should be doing if you're struggling to make your mortgage payment, or you can't afford your grocery bill, or if you've got 3 kids who need that money more than your Star Wars action figure addiction.
Uh-oh, Dan, I think Trina might use that against you.
She doesn't watch anyways.
You need to prioritize everything in life before you can consider having the disposable income to start collecting, and that's collecting anything. You need to have the disposable income, and sometimes if you're just following your heart, you can be lucky, and sometimes that disposable income is $5. You might be able to find something that you're really into for $5. But when you start talking about $500 or $5,000 or $50,000 on an item, well, you need to be very, very aware of that, and that's also where you have to be smart with the investment potential. If you're getting to the point where you're spending 5 figures on something, you want to make sure that you're not overpaying and that you can recoup that money down the road. Because when you're dropping that kind of cash, yeah, it's great to love it, but it's also great to know you can get your money back out of it if you get it, laid off from work tomorrow.
So true. I personally for me, everything that I have in any kind of collection, like if you look back here, I have things that I use, read, or play with. Right? Like I play with my board games, I play with my X-Wing, I play with video games or whatever, and if I don't use it or I'm done using it, they just go onto the shelf, and then that's where they kind of sit. But that's just my personal thing. Like I
But you're
don't
buying what
usually.
you love, right?
I buy what I love, and I love to, I love. Well, my kid loves Lego, so we buy a ton of Lego. Uh, but yeah, that's the way my collection works. That's the way I think that anybody who gets into collections, period, that's how they start, right? Like you just buy what you love,
Totally.
and that's the way it should be.
That's the way it should stay.
Yeah.
I've got
Can you?
I've got another question if you
Yep.
don't mind. I
Fire
mean,
away.
I could listen to you talk about this kind of stuff for hours. You were a walking encyclopedia, and it's amazing and fascinating.
Yeah.
Which is, I imagine, your knowledge is why you are a certified appraiser. But I'm curious about that. I imagine that, like very selective sommeliers, the process of becoming a certified appraiser is very difficult, and they are few and far between. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you went down that road and what it entails? And
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it's not as hard as you would think, but you need to have to be able to back it up. Anybody can take the course. I mean, it's a $2,000 weekend course. You can take it through the Canadian Personal Property Appraisers Group. But if you don't have the knowledge to back it up, then you're throwing your money away, and it's very stupid of you to do that. I was the first person in Canada to become certified to specialize in toys and comic books. Since then, two other friends of mine out east have got their certification as well. But yeah, it's really, I often say that I've forgotten more about this stuff than most people will ever know. And that's not an egotistical thing. I'm actually forgetting a lot of things these days. But, after 25 years of doing this, I've picked up a lot of knowledge in a lot of areas. When it came time to needing an insurance, basically to get insurance on my collection, because it is a high dollar amount, they said you need to have specific collectibles insurance and you need to have it appraised by someone. And there was no one in the country other than myself who would have been even remotely competent to appraise all those types of prototypes and original comic art and animation art and stuff like that that I was talking about. So I figured, well, if I'm having difficulty finding somebody to do this, how many other people are having difficulty doing this? So I looked into it, and I found the only place in Canada that you can become a certified appraiser through is the Canadian Personal Property Appraisers Group. So I just waited for when they had something coming by, and they had one of their courses in Calgary, so I went down for the weekend, did the course, and now I'm a certified appraiser.
Awesome.
And so now, being one of the few in the entire country, I imagine that, I mean, Edmonton's a fairly nerdy community. We've got a lot of other comic book and collectible shops around the city. I imagine that you get calls quite often.
I do, and unfortunately, I'm so backed up that and so busy with all of my other businesses that I actually don't have time to do appraisals for people. In terms of, like, I offer various services. The main one is a pre-loss insurance report. So it's basically cataloging your entire collection with a value, and you get an official report for your insurance company so they know what happens in case there's a loss. So it's a pre-loss report. I can't do those anymore. I'm just too backed up in everything that I do that then they take up so much time. Where the benefit is if people want to sell their collections and they find me because I'm a certified appraiser, so I will sit down with them and I'll go through their collection with them, show them why it's worth X amount of dollars, explain everything to them in great detail, and then send them on their way, or we can work out a price. So that's where it does work out for me. And I don't mind doing what are called desktop appraisals. If somebody comes in and just wants to know what something's worth, it's like, all right, well, you can pay me $20 and I'll tell you what that's worth. But 9 times out of 10, when somebody brings that to me, I'm like, it's not worth you paying me to tell you how much that's worth. A lot of people see dollar signs. The recessions, whether it's the recession Alberta's going through right now, or the recession of 2008. This is when you see people holding on to, all of those, Wildcats number ones that they bought in 1991, thinking that they're, now going to be able to, wow, I got this comic book. I'm okay. I'm sitting pretty. And I'm like, okay, well, that's going to go in my dollar bin. And so I find myself breaking hearts a lot in this job.
That's typically when you had something that from the 90s, it's just automatic. I get a little bit of feedback from you. Sorry.
Are we good?
I think so.
Nope. I always tell people that once something is manufactured to be a collectible, it inherently loses all collectability.
Yes.
Because people are buying it to keep it and put it in their closet and invest in it, and then it's not. Then everybody's doing that, and it's not rare. It's been kept in it's just not a collectible.
All right, so I'm just gonna pause you out for 2 seconds while I talk here. Can you tell us a little bit more about the portraits event that you have at your store just before we close out, and where we can find you on the web and wherever else, like in real life?
Yeah, the portrait show is going to be the vast majority of the 30 paintings that we had in San Francisco, which is all, they're all beautiful, beautiful paintings by some of the world's foremost tattoo artists, and they're just Star Wars characters painted as if they'd be heavily tattooed. There's a lot of really fun pieces in that, and I also have a new book that goes with that. It's a catalog, an exhibition catalog for Portraits of the Galaxy Far, Far Away that showcases all of the artwork in the book. That is opening on February 26th here at Shades of Grey, and then on February 28th we have the Edmonton Collector Con at the Italian Cultural Center. So it's going to be a busy weekend for me, but it'll be fun. As for where you can find us on the web, edtoyshow.com is for the toy show website. Shadesofgraytattoo.com is for the shop and the toy side of things. Theforceandtheflesh.com is for the book. ShaneTurgeon.com is my personal website, and then we also have all kinds of links for Twitter and Instagram and Facebooks and all that stuff too.
Awesome. Well, I think that's just about it for us on tonight's show. Chelsea, do we have anything else?
Other than the amazing events that Shane just talked about, the Portrait Gallery and the Edmonton Collector Show, what other events do we have on our calendar coming up, Dan, if people want to get out in the community and get some nerd action in their life?
Well, we do have another Nerdcast that's coming up next week. Next week is... Oh, and I don't even know who it is. My wife did not write it down for me. Yeah, sorry. Sorry. We have comedian Nick McQuick is coming on the show for next week. And we also have Gobfest that's coming up in April. And if you guys go down in our calendar on the northernnerdnetwork.com, we have a whole, February is just full of events that are happening around the city. But Happy Harbor Comics does have their art show that's happening next month in March, and they have their Scotch tasting. And in the end of April, we do have, of course, the Calgary Comic and Entertainment Expo that is happening. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening over the next little while for everyone to check out. And if you want to go and check out that stuff, we do have it all on our calendar. And if you guys have any suggestions for us, please feel free to just send us an email link or whatever. Like we have Facebook and Twitter. You know, you guys can find us all over the place. So you guys can easily find us there. So yeah, Chelsea, do you have anything else? Is that it?
Just a big thank you so much to Shane for being with us this evening and sharing all of his knowledge and telling us all about his upcoming events. Thank you so much. It was awesome having you on.
Thank you, Shane.
Yeah, it was my pleasure being here. Thank you guys for having me on and chatting about all this nerdy stuff all night.
Woohoo!
I got to keep cutting them off there. I apologize for that. Anyways, that's it for this edition of the Nerdcast. I want to thank everybody out there for watching and or listening to this edition, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.